This is for
The first item on the agenda is public comments on agenda items. A total of 30 minutes is set aside for public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting. The maximum time allowed for any one speaker is 3 minutes. Public comments at the beginning of the meeting are limited to items on the agenda. Persons who wish to participate in the public comment portion of the meeting must state their name and the specific topic about which they wish to speak. As speakers must limit comments to issues appropriate for public discussion, compliments or complaints about student discipline, specific student issues, or personnel must not be addressed during public comment time. If you have a personal issue and would like to come up at the end of the meeting and speak with any member of the board or the central administration, we'd be happy to help you. Also, if anyone has a question which they would like answered, please give it in writing to our district clerk, Mrs. Pedro, and then it will be posted on the website with the answer. That way we can answer as accurately as possible and the entire community will be able to see the answer. Thank you.
Better? Deborah Torres-Henning, agenda 6.04. Approval of change in scope opposition. Interesting little title there. And hidden in the description is that you're looking for money again to purchase property again. But we just voted that down last year's election. So I don't know what you're trying to do. We're going to run this every year. Every election we're going to put it up and say, we want money for a new building for our offices. You want to put it on a ballot? Put it on a ballot again. We'll vote it down. Stop asking for money for new offices. You're not going to get it.
Caramel, Hopewell Junction. This is with regard to item number 5.01, the superintendent's recommended budget. I just want to say, first of all, good evening, and I want to thank the board for all of your hard work and dedication. I just want to say that my husband and I have 5 children in the Wapner Central School District. We have a 10th grader at John Jay, 7th and 8th grader at Van Wyck, and a 3rd and 5th grader at Fishkill Plains. This past fall, I was fortunate enough to watch my 7th grader take part in the John Jay cross-country team. In order to make the team, she had to go through the advanced placement processing, and as a result of making the team, she needed to be transported every day to John Jay in order to make her cross-country practices. I picked her up every day at dismissal time. We made our way over to Jay, and Fiona would join the team already an hour into their practice. In addition, I had to pick her up, and she had to make the buses at Jay to get to her meets. Although Fiona was fortunate enough to experience being a part of the high school team, many other junior high school kids are not. Just for logistical reasons. Not every parent can pick up their kid and get them to and from school every day. Additionally, not all of these kids can pass the advanced placement processing in order to qualify for a high school team. I'm aware of at least several other families who children wanted to run cross country and couldn't for these exact reasons. So tonight I'd like to ask the board, please consider adding a modified cross country team to both Van Wyck and Wapner's junior high schools. Throughout the fall, I attended every single cross-country meet, and as a result, I realized that our school was one of the only ones that does not have a modified cross-country program in our district, compared to other districts. John Jay and Ketchum are always operating at a disadvantage because of this against equally competitive and comparable-sized high schools. We simply cannot find enough kids interested in cross country once they reach high school if they haven't been offered this chance to play this sport at their younger years. Highly competitive and successful varsity teams are built on kids who started early and participated in modified programs. We need to get our children interested and enthusiastic about cross country at an early age in order to build the foundation for success once they reach the high school level. Like with any sport, as you know, the longer you play, the better you become. We need to start these programs early in order to help our children attain the necessary skills and experience with which to achieve excellence and reach the high school level. With that being said, I like to stress that any financial burden associated with the cross-country modified program would be minimal for our school district, while the benefits of such a program would be optimal. In summary, again, please consider the importance of adding modified cross-country to the budget. Our high schools need a modified program in order to continue with a successful varsity team and being a part of the team. Not to mention the benefits of exercise, feeling of being a part of the team, overall higher self-esteem for our children, all of which I witnessed firsthand.
Oh, that thing for her lower it.
Good evening. We are the Playground Savers. I am Gianna Paciano, one of the leaders of this organization. We hope to put some new playground equipment on the Myers Corners playground because a small portion of it was taken down. Hello, my name is Jackie Rogers and I'm the other leader of the Playground Savers. As Gianna said, we would like to put some new equipment on our school's playground. We have a list of the equipment that we think would be great for the playground. We hope to improve our school's playground. Hello, I'm Krista Paciano, one of the managers for the Playground Savers. We respectfully ask the board if you could replace the playground equipment that was taken down. If not, we are prepared to fundraise ourselves. Hello, my name is Jenna Franco. I'm the second manager of the Playground Savers and I'm in charge of fundraising. As Krista said, if you are not going to provide the equipment, we are prepared to start fundraising on our own. We would fundraise by making a GoFundMe site, bacon, candy sales, and raffles.
Hello, I'm Claire Howard, and I'm one of the helpers. Unfortunately, the other helper, Angelina Rabati, could not be here due to other plans. I help a little bit with everything. We are aware that the taxes are high, so we do not want to raise taxes in case that would do all to other fundraising ourselves.
Are there any other public comments at this time?
Just raise it. Raise it. Just raise it. Raise it.
I can kneel down. So I just wanted to continue on with the idea of modified sports and freshman sports. I've only been attending a few meetings and not knowing exactly where things are when they get presented in the budget. But I feel it's very important, just as is to have modified track or other sports, that we need to expand all the sports, including into the freshman level. I've emailed many of you on the board already. I've heard back on many responses that everyone sees that they are positive on it, but then trying to find money out of the budget is the main concern. Over these last few meetings, I've definitely heard spots where you were going to have different cost-saving measures. I'm sure that we can find the amount of money in the budget to then allocate for freshman sports. You can go on and say how good it is to advance the high school level teams, but I think when it comes down to for the enjoyment of the children and advancing their own morale, especially at an age when they're entering high school, I think it's very difficult for many kids having sports allocated strictly to a freshman level team or modified team in junior high school. I think this will be a tremendous benefit to all kids involved. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is John Long. I have 3 children in the district and one that's graduated. just to follow up to Mr. Bartusiak, I'm also in favor of freshman sports, reinstituting that for our community. We need other high schools in the area that have freshman sports, and with a school the size of Wapager Central, it just gives the children a great opportunity to do something other than going home and play video games. And it's great for self-esteem. I'm a coach. I've coached many of the kids who will be in the program or have been in the program, and I just see that the benefits far outweigh the minimal cost that it would be to have to reinstitute the freshman sports. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak now? Seeing no one, we'll now move on to board comments. Mr. Lemmy?
I'd like to congratulate John Jay students, in particular Isabel Wu, the Marist College winner. Also the John Jay High School Science Olympiad team, placed 7th in the state. The National Spanish Language Society got 34 new members, so congratulations to all of them. The John Jay High School bowling team competed at the state level for the first time ever, coming in 5th. The coaches were Dundee McGwee and Timothy Kermani. And our RCK also, I'd like to congratulate two John Jay students, Melissa Diacontonis for winning first place, and Victoria Robustello for winning the grand prize at the Green Smith House area contest. John Jay, I'd like to congratulate the Odyssey Literary Magazine. As usual, they won first place. Congratulations to Mask and Mind. This past weekend, I attended the play, The Music Man. It was exceptional. I attended on Sunday. There was not one seat empty. So the kids did a phenomenal job. So congratulations to the students, all the actors, the crew, the musicians, and the directors, of course. It was really a fantastic play. In addition, I'd like to commend RCK, the 216 National Marist College Program, Emma X. Sampugnaro and Stephanie Shun. And congratulations to the RCK students who placed in the 2016 Science Fair. Congratulations to Megan Eagleton, who was awarded the most original experimental idea for grades 9 through 12. And of course, there were a lot of students given first, second, and third place. I'd like to read a letter from, actually before I do that, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Lukima for holding the 15th annual Netscape Hudson Valley Conference this past weekend. A lot of teachers attended at their own cost. I attended some of the lectures that were exceptional. So I'd like to thank Mr. Lukima for putting the program together. And I'd like to read a letter from a former board member who was asking us to support a very worthy cause. And the letter reads as follows. The Rotary Club of Wapager Falls, in collaboration with the Rotary Club of Spring Valley and Longombardi Restaurant, is honored to host a fundraising event on March 31st, 2016. The fundraising will take place all day, including a dinner presentation at 6 p.m. by Howard Golden and Edward J. Frank, the co-founders. These two individuals are Vietnam veterans who have returned multiple times to their former place of battle, working to make life better for the children of their country. Over 898 students are educated every year because of their idea and step out of their comfort zone. This event will help veterans carry out their vital work. Once again, it's going to be Longombardi's Restaurant on March 31st. It'll be a whole day affair. 10% of the proceeds will be donated to the cause. So I sincerely hope that many of us will attend such a good cause. That's it for the time being. That's enough.
Thank you. Mrs. Pelton.
Thank you. I attended the Science Fair and the All-County Musical Festival this year, and the talent was absolutely extraordinary. Beyond that, I wanted to take a moment to thank Mr. Mensch for his unsolicited efforts to
support both the science and the arts. The two events coincided with each other, and we made every effort to let the students that were able to participate in both do so. And again, at the All-County Music Festival, the compliments paid to our music staff and our faculty was overwhelming. We did a fantastic job, and I was really proud to be there. And the students were amazing. I could not believe that was 5th and 6th graders.
Mrs. Carrath.
Yes, I'd like to commend the Royce Ketchum Italian Honor Society for their Buon Appetito food competition. It was awesome. My husband and I enjoyed it immensely. It was a great idea. I had never attended it before, and I was really impressed. I also attended Music Man last night, or yesterday afternoon, and it was a phenomenal job. Close to 200 students participated in that production in some way, shape, or form, and every single one made a lasting contribution. It was just wonderful. I was able to attend the Dutchess County School Board Association meeting for our board, and I just encourage the public and our members to find the announcement on the website for the meeting that's going to take place on April 7th with our regent, Judith Johnson. There will be a meeting that night, and it's a Q&A, and I encourage everyone to go on the website, and if there are any questions that you would like to pose to her, to please submit them. We have plenty of time to do that, and we'd like to see as much participation from our Wappinger community as possible.
Mr. Rubin.
Go ahead, say it.
No, go ahead. Keep going. Got a long meeting.
Well, I hope they're still outside to hear that, but the students who were here did a great job, I think, in making the presentation for their case. And I would thank them for coming in. But I also attended the audit committee. I had the opportunity to go to two plays this past 2 weeks, of NY Junior High School, Annie of Green Gables, as well as Roy Ketchum's Music Man. I would say that if anybody has an opportunity to go to any of our plays, these are, in my opinion, equal to Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway productions. They are fabulous, in my opinion. Attended the Capital Improvement Committee meeting. There were two science fairs, the District Science Fair and the Myers Corners Science Fair. The kids did a heck of a job there. Had the privilege of attending the Hispanic Honor Society inductions. I want to say probably maybe 100 or so children were there, students were there. Met with our business manager, along with Mrs. Carath and Mrs. Belton, attended the New York State School Board's 2-day conference in Albany, which was very informative, and we were there to try and wrangle a few more bucks from our state legislators as part of the overall group. I have to thank Mr. Lokima for a wonderful presentation of the New York State Association for Computers and Technologies in Education. I always learned a lot from there to see what's new. Not that I'll ever use it, but I see what's new. And that was held in RCK. I also attended the second, in this junior high school, the second PTA council meeting on Narcan. That was sponsored by the PTA council. Thank you.
Mrs. Laval. Mr. Silva. Dr. Bisbee.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to thank Dr. Schuket and Van Cultural Committee for the letter of appreciation in regard to the event held at the mosque about anti-Muslim sentiments circulating in the media affecting Muslim students. Last month, I was away for 3 weeks to do some humanitarian social work, and there is an article written about me and my work, and I will read it. In February, Dr. Rizvi spent 3 weeks in Pakistan volunteering at medical clinics and hospitals, providing free outpatient care to hundreds of people. Rizvi and her medical colleagues, including 2 other doctors and a microbiologist, treated over 600 patients in a small rural community in Khairpur, Pakistan, and most of them were poor, lacked education, in dire need of medical attention. I was born in a country where I saw a lot of human suffering. Dr. Rizvi said, when I see poverty and the corruption of government, I pray to God that there is something I can do, but I cannot fix the government, so I find my own ways to help humanity. I have a suggestion. In future, we can consider organizing a satellite clinic via Skype for students who are interested in doing community rotation out of country in the medical field. That's just my suggestion. Thank you.
Hi. I also attended the science fairs at Myers Corners for kindergarten through 4th grade and the district science fair for 5th through 12th. The students did some wonderful work, and even the youngest explained their projects very clearly. And these were not just little dioramas, they were real scientific experiments. It shows what a fine job our teachers are doing in teaching science. I attended the Italian Honor Society, very tasty dinner at RCK, ate too much, and the Spanish Honor Society induction at John Jay. Like the previous speakers, I went to the Music Man at Ketchum, and it's really professional. The quality of our productions here are amazing. I attended the Capital Improvement Committee and Audit Committee meetings, and with Mrs. Carafe and Mr. Rubin went to Albany to lobby. We had meetings with State Senator Sue Serino and the State Assemblyman Karen Lawler and Dee Dee Barrett, and they gave us quite a bit of their time, and we had a good conversation about the needs of the schools. I also attended the Sheep Road Birds of Prey Assembly. I've seen a number of these over the years, and this was really the best. They actually took all the students and the birds outside and showed how they catch things and come to a lure, so it was fabulous. And at Evans, I attended the author's visit by Meg Kearney, and I'd like to thank both these presenters who gave their time free to our schools and our students. It was very good of them. And then I attended open house at Oak Grove. If you have the opportunity to stop into our schools to the open houses, it's just wonderful to see all the projects that the children are doing. So it's good to know that they're not totally involved in studying for tests or doing practice tests. They're doing many creative things as well as part of an all-round education. Thank you. Next is our superintendent's recommended budget. Mr. Carrion.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. Before we get started, thank you for mentioning everywhere you attended over the last few weeks. I don't have to then reiterate the same message, but I agree with what everyone shared just a little while ago. I'd like to make a quick announcement that our location, which has happened in the past for our next board meeting held April 4th, will be held at RCK at the same time, Royce Ketchum High School. And the one thing that I don't get tired of saying also is that when I look out and I see all of the seniors and getting prepared for graduation and making sure that you get your signatures for tonight, I just want to give you words of encouragement and tell you that we are extremely proud of you. Keep doing the great work that you're doing. And sooner than you know, you will be walking across that stage for your high school diploma. So thank you for being here. We have a long agenda, so we're going to move right ahead with the superintendent's report. Recommended budget. Today is our first day for the superintendent's recommended budget. What I'd like to share with you as well is that this is just the very first draft of my recommendation, of the team's recommendation that's sitting here in the audience for the 2016-2017 budget. You may not have all of your questions right now. You may want to think about some of this information, But please, as soon as you have any questions that you need answered, we want those so that when we come back for the next board meeting, we can actually put those questions up and have a good conversation, discussion regarding some of the items that you will see in the recommended budget. We always start off as part of our mission statement, which discuss to empower all students with the competencies and confidence to challenge themselves, to pursue their passions, and to realize their potential while growing as responsible members of the community, along with our core values. Our budget process, as I mentioned already, is interactive. This is a process we started last year. We have been very transparent in sharing all of the questions that have been asked by board members and community members, and also to provide answers. My time's up? As you can see, an aggregate view of all the financial numbers that drive the district's operation for the following year. As I said, we provide opportunity, allow a forum to gather data. We held 2 meetings, and unfortunately, we did not have a great turnout for the community, but we have some plans to hold another type of community forum to share this information. We provide opportunity for feedback, more than a collection of numbers. This is a reflection of our mission statement and core values. This is very important information as we go through the superintendent's recommended budget. So for the 2015 school budget, impacting the 2016-17 school budget, if you may remember, and we'll show you some spreadsheets real soon, the original tax levy for the 2015-16 school budget was $150,412,437. The unanticipated amended 2015-2016 tax levy became $156,396,228. So you can see that was the change. We started off, that's what was on the board books, and our unanticipated tax levy was changed, and we'll explain why. The change happened because Global Foundries purchased IBM. The result, elimination of the pilot agreement, which is payment in lieu of taxes. Once again, we show you those figures. And what we did, we decided we would also show it in terms of the percentage difference. So as you can see, it's 6.13%, and with the amended tax levy, 1.94%. And we'll explain this better as we continue to move forward. And please chime in.
I'm sorry, just one thing I wanted to add. Jose, can you go back one slide for me, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Since you have the clicker. The $156 million amended 15-16 tax levy is still and remains within the tax cap. Because on the next slide where you saw that the pilot was eliminated with the purchase of IBM's sale to Global Foundries, the pilot is a part of the tax cap calculation as well. So while our overall revenues will remain the same for the 15-16 school year, the allocation of those revenues changed. The pilot number decreased and the tax number increased, but we are still within the cap for the 15-16 year.
Which was, we were a little frightened about maybe not being within the cap. And as you can see now, the tax levy by dollars for the 2016-17 school year, $159,426,539. So the proposed budget for the 2016-17 school year is $218,740,535. Levy to levy, as we showed you in the previous page, we are talking 6.13%. And we keep reiterating, and this was done purposely to show over and over again, this 1.3% due to the IBM pilot. There was that change. And budget to budget, we are talking 2.20%.
You're going to trust me. Sorry.
Thank you.
In this analysis, again, we're trying to show that budget to budget and levy to levy comparison from one year to the next. And we do show 2015-16 twice. We show the taxpayer approved amount as well as the amended amount. The budget remains the same for both years, for both of the 15-16 scenarios, but the taxpayer approved tax level is significantly increased, and it looks like a large jump. When you compare that 15-16 that was originally approved, that was a 6.13. That's that big blue bar you see. But when you compare the 15-16 amended to the 16-17 proposed, it's the 1.94%. We were trying to make this visual so that we could try to have this conversation as candidly as possible.
Once again, we keep reminding what we're talking about, so the 15-16 budget stays the same. So what does a 2.2 increase mean for our community? It means sustainability of programs, honors and advanced placement, academic intervention supports for enrichment, playground equipment replacements, and grounds upkeep. You do remember last year we did add to the budget to continue to work on our buildings as well as our outside of our buildings to help support our infrastructure, teaching and student supplies, K-12 fine and performing arts, technology plan, professional development for staff and the community, which this school year, by the way, we are going to have our second parental workshop in April, which we are extremely excited about. We're also talking expansion of existing programs. So we have been listening to the community, intramurals at junior high school, new course offerings at the high schools, freshman sports, boys basketball and baseball, additional assistant principal at 2 high schools, instructional and non-instructional staffing. Here you have the spreadsheet where we show you the figures, the monetary figures of the budgetary personnel additions. At this point, we're sharing the personnel additions. We want to continue to enhance and grow the house system at our high schools, which would then mean to eliminate the position that we have for part-time deans and would help to offset this cost for an additional assistant principal, one for Royce Ketchum High School and one for John Jay High School. In addition to that, due to unfunded mandates, and I think it's important to understand that the unfunded mandates that we're talking about here with the E&L teachers, we will be required to also increase our number of E&L teachers in our district. You do understand that throughout the year, the board had English as a new language, which we used to call English as a second language. You do understand that throughout this school year, based on the mandates we had required, that we had to ask the board to approve 6 assignments in our secondary schools, additional assignments for teachers to take on to help with this. One of the reasons why you do see 3.2 E&L teachers, we're continue to work towards really creating students staying within their communities. At this point in time, the numbers at the high school, we have about 29, or I believe about 29 students. 17 of those students are John Jay students, but they do attend RCK and establishing an E&L program, 2 centers one for our John Jay and RCK, would be beneficial for both schools and really help with the graduation data. The other piece that I want to share with you, when we think about unfunded mandates, we really should think about unfunded mandates that are based on law and the unfunded mandates that are based by the State Education Department and the Board of Regents. And this is one that's been established by the Board of Regents, the New York State Education Department. What I mean by law is tri-borough, in terms of when teachers' contracts, let's just say that if you don't renew their contracts, they're still entitled to their 2% increase. That's law. 3012D, which is APPR, in terms of teacher and principal evaluation, that many of us really voice our opinions about and what we believe in, and that's also law. Carbon monoxide, fingerprinting, those are items that are unfunded mandates, but that's law. That's where we have to go to legislators and take action. As far as the unfunded mandates that come from the state, that's where we have to go and make sure that we are talking, as we heard Trustee Carruthers speak about Regent Johnson and how there's a meeting, to really go out there and advocate for our schools and some of these unfunded mandates. In addition to that, last year we asked for 2.0 technology teachers. We're still having a very hard time. The vocational programs, as maybe many of you remember it being called, there are not a lot of people out there with certification. And when they are, all the districts are fighting for these people. So we weren't able to fill the position, and it's back in the budget. Transportation, one head bus driver, 10 months. Kristen, do you want to talk about that too, of some offset costs?
This position was, we had this position several years ago. It was a 12-month position. It was eliminated through the budget process several years ago, as I had indicated. But these requirements from New York State Department of Transportation as well as State Education Department continue to be necessary. So we have our head bus drivers working overtime to accomplish as many of these tasks as possible. So through savings in the Transportation Department, because the head bus drivers are doing this work on overtime, we've been able to create this position as a 10-month position going forward in the 16-17 year. Additionally, based on several conversations with facilities and operations director Broas, the new facilities that have come on site have come on board. The associated costs with these new heating and ventilation systems, preventive maintenance is imperative. And so we are looking to hire a maintenance mechanic preventative in this budget in order to keep upkeep of these systems and focus mainly on preventative maintenance. The last position we're asking for in this 16-17 budget is a 1.0 health aid typist. And again, through past budgets, we have eliminated these positions. But the record keeping that's required, we did purchase iPads for the nurses last year through the budget. We just feel that we want to take a second look. We need to take a second look. It's warranted to ensure that we have proper coverage in our nurses' office around the district. In the non-personnel portion of the budget, we do have some additions. Do you want to jump in? Oh, okay. So in the area of equipment, as you can see, it's listed there. These equipment purchases are related to interscholastic as well as physical education. Just as a point of note, we have $5,000 limit, meaning you have to have an expense that exceeds $5,000 in order for it to be classified as equipment. So that's what's encompassed in these requests. We have 2 sanders that are being requested by the Facilities and Operations Department. They're not new, they're replacements for existing equipment, I believe, Mr. Rose. And also the playground equipment that we have budgeted in the safety and security area of the budget, and a 12,000-pound lift for transportation. That would be approximately $99,000 and change.
Sure. Materials and resources. We continue to try to build our building principals budget as well during our fiscal crisis. There a number for their amount that was allotted to them for students was decreased substantially. So we continue to build that aspect of building budgets. In addition to that, we need to continue to upgrade and upkeep our school furniture. Many of our classroom and student furniture are in poor condition, or really we need to just do away with it. We're going to sustain our parental workshop sessions, classroom libraries. Many of our teachers, which quite frankly under this administration, we're not in favor of teachers purchasing and creating their own classroom libraries. So what we do have in the budget as well is to ensure that all of our classrooms at the elementary school level are equipped with their own classroom library. A universal screener is once again one of those unfunded mandates that come from the Board of Regents. But universal screeners have been around for a very long time. And it's time that we reassess what we are doing in terms of screening our students. I believe that the Wappinger Central School District years ago, any senior people here longer than I have been, had the Dibbles at one time as well, as in the Dibbles, yes, Dr. Bach? So the Dibbles was used as a universal screener.
Could you explain those acronyms at DIBBLS and also what a universal screener is, please? Thank you.
Okay, so a universal screener is you assess the students 3 times a school year. Some do more in terms of monitoring their growth, ensuring that we are providing them with the correct support services if necessary. And at the same time, it's a great way of really determining math levels and reading levels for students. The DIBBLS is so long ago, Madam President, I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but it served that purpose in English language arts and reading. Freshman sports, as you can see, bringing back freshman sports to our high schools. In addition to that, intramurals at our junior high school, technology advances, tri-state evaluation, and what we will be doing is the project for special education and really looking at our special education program and services that we provide in the district. Now, the district has been partners with the Tri-State Consortium for, I would say, approximately 10 years or so. We are the only school district in Dutchess County that is associated with the Tri-State Consortium. They are a very prestigious consortium, and they basically work with many school districts in the state of New York, the state of New Jersey, and the state of Connecticut. My recommendation is that we continue to stay with the Tri-State. The one thing that sometimes when you go on peeling that onion, although you've always partnered with the Tri-State Consortium, and every other year, they're required to conduct a visit, it has never really been formally put into the school budget as an item. And therefore, that's why you will see the Tri-State visit for the next school year listed as part of one of our budgetary non-personnel districts. And as you can see, occupational education slots increased in special education needs for our BOCES program. So what we have here is providing you, once again, we want to make sure that you're able to see the approved tax levy from 2015-16, the amended tax levy, which is slightly over $6 million, and the proposed budget. So we're talking about the approved tax levy the amended tax levy, and on the 2000, and right in the bottom we show you the columns for the proposed budget. So 2015-16, the proposed budget, once again we shared with you, is $214 million. For the 2016-17 school year, proposed budget is $218,740,535. Budget to budget, we're talking a $4,708,407, and budget to budget percentage is 2.20%. And we are still within the tax cap. And I think that's important to note, that we're still within the tax cap. If we can just get through the presentation and then we'll get questions. So in summary, Ms. Crandall, I don't know, I might.
No problem. So in summary again, when you look at budget to budget comparison, it is at 2.2% between the 15-16 and the 16-17 proposed budget. State aid right now, we still don't have that information. April 1st is the deadline. We are anxiously anticipating it. So we have left it at 0% increase to be conservative. Trust me, we are making a list of things that if state aid does come in higher, we will be looking to share with the Board of Education to gather further data on how to use that.
I don't know if you recall last year when we talked about seed money, seed funding, and the difference between seed funding. So what I'd like you to also think about, and as we continue to hear from the community, is really to create a responsible balance between things that we don't want to risk losing in the future. Not to say that we won't implement, but it's for the board to decide. But in addition to that, to really think about some of the things that will sustain itself in terms of maybe some other materials and resources. For example, 3 years ago, the district purchased the math textbooks in Focus. And along with the math textbooks in Focus, there is the manipulatives, which is all the hands-on materials that would help with instruction. That part of that purchase was not, never happened because of trying to balance a budget. However, that would be seed money, because we are then purchasing resources that our students can utilize, and the following year they will still be able to utilize it because they won't be we won't lose that. However, there may be other things in terms of, let's just say we were looking to hire an additional teacher for purposes of decreasing class sizes even more, then that's something that if we did, that maybe we lose in the future, because, and then that program would go away. But I think it's fair to say to create a balance between bringing things in that would sustain itself and things that we may lose, because you never know if we may be able to sustain it. But if we bring in everything that we are maybe risking that we may not be able to sustain, it's something for the board to really think about.
Sorry. And where we had indicated earlier about that payment in lieu of taxes going away and it was a reallocation of revenue, you can see that under the other revenue line. You'll see there's a change of $6 million approximately. That is the pilot payment, which is now being reported as a tax revenue. So it's really an offset. So you see a pretty large decrease there, but again, it's a reallocation of funds. Our assigned fund balance that would be returned to the taxpayers as part of our budget balance would remain the same. At this point in time, we don't see any change in that number. And our tax levy, again, from the taxpayer approved to the 16.7 proposed would be 6.13, but from the amended budget to the 16-17 proposed, it would be 1.94. So in the next few weeks, we'll be very busy having budget conversations. We look forward to gathering information from the community. We look forward to gathering information from the Board of Education. We do plan on having everything posted from this evening by tomorrow morning on the website. in the 2-week period between tomorrow and the 28th. We will be asking for board trustee questions follow-up. We'll ask for review of this presentation, any questions to come through our budget email. We have only received one so far, and we provided that information and also posted that on the website as a frequently asked question. And again, we're eagerly awaiting any new information that we will be receiving that we can amend estimates, make updates, formalize this budget for the voters in the coming months. On March 28th, we'll have a board budget workshop on state aid. Hopefully by then we'll have some good information as to where we'll stand for that. In the period after that short 1-week period, we'll have met that state aid budget deadline. We're very hopeful that we'll be receiving that information and also having a contingency budget conversation with you all at the April 4th meeting that's mandated by New York State. April 5th through the 18th, again, more follow-up. We really look forward to gathering this information from you because we can answer questions. We want to answer questions, and we'd like to be able to do it thoroughly and accurately. And on April 19th, the budget, as it will be presented, will be before you for approval.
Therefore, we will continue to workshop the budget and ensure that your recommendations, we continue to work on your recommendations. And as Kristen did mention, we don't know exactly what it means for that gap elimination adjustment to go away, but we know something's going away. We don't know how much of that is going away. We don't know what foundation aid is really going to look like. So we have to take those matters into account as we continue to work this budget. We will continue to workshop. We'll use the clickers because it's, quite frankly, although it's a much easier process, it really provides us with immediate data of how the board is thinking and what the board is thinking in terms of the budget.
Are there any questions from the board members? Mr. Lumiere.
I'll email my questions. I have several of them, but I think I'll email all one, then you can respond to it.
Okay. Mr. Rubin.
Well, first off, I want to thank you for answering some questions that I had sent to you. I also have to thank Mr. Lokima because the term clickers they used also at New York State Computers in classrooms. So I learned that. Mr. Crandall, I think it's important to just let the community, for information purposes, to redefine tax levy versus tax rate.
The tax rate is a calculation based on the assessed values of each town, and it's set by the assessors in the town. The tax rate is then calculated by an equalization rate and multiplication, and we set those rates in August. We don't get final assessed values until August, late July, early August for the following school year. So we are basing a lot of information on last year's assessed values. That's the best data we have. The tax levy is based on the tax cap calculation as required and mandated by New York State. It starts with the previous year's tax cap amount, and the pilots are added in, payment of new taxes from the previous year, current year. There's a capital tax levy, there's a growth factor, many 7 or 8 steps to get to what the allowable levy would be. And then you have exclusions. We've talked about them in the past. New York State Teachers Retirement System, or TRS, New York State Employees Retirement System, we call it ERS, and the capital tax levy. You add those numbers, they're called exclusions, to the allowable. It's kind of an oxymoron. You get your tax levy.
Just one more. Just one last question. Later on in this meeting tonight, we're going to be talking about the building. If the rental cost of that were eliminated through the purchase of the building, the purchase money has already been allocated. Am I correct?
The money for the rental has been allocated, and we have in the rental budget line of this presentation, this budget presented, And we also have increased the debt service line for the difference between the rental and the debt service interest and principal payments if the purchase of the building was approved. So yes, Mr. Rubin, that's.
So that $90,000
Yes, sir.
rental, if the building were purchased, we would not be paying that rent.
Correct.
That money could then come back into the general budget.
It would go back to those principal and interest debt service lines that I just mentioned, because we would be making those payments. We're looking for a July 1st purchase date, so we could not pay any rent in the new school year.
Which would be a benefit to the taxpayer.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Roosevelt. The question I have is, in the district-wide, you talked about health aid typist. Is this a new position? I mean, you have this position from before, or it's a new position? And what is the role of this health aid typist?
We used to have many more, I believe, health aid typists. What I use in very simple words is that in many of our schools, and some of our largest schools especially, the nurse has to do the entire thing. So when a student comes in, and there are many days when you have 6 to 10 students in the health office, that nurse also has to do the intake of, which is the work that the health aid typist would do in a health office. So that nurse is responsible to do the intake, get the child situated, and continue to work on other children who are ill while they're in the office.
It's a kind
So
of
it's
helping
pretty
the
demanding.
nurse.
Absolutely.
So this 47,874 is a salary of like
One person.
Just one person?
Yes, and benefits.
Just as a helper?
Salary and benefits.
And salary. And the other question I have is that this English new language for the school you are saying is R.C. Ketchum and elementary. What about this Royce Ketchum? What about John Jay? They don't
No, it should say John Jay High School.
Yeah.
Right now, what we have is we have centers that we call them centers. So Royce Ketchum is an ENL center, an English as a second language center. However, we have 17 students from the John Jay community that attend Royce Ketchum. When we look at the students who attend Royce Ketchum from the John Jay community, we also take into account the transportation costs from all over, from the places that they live, to actually transport them to and from school. So we take that into effect and look and know that it's best for them to attend John Jay at such a large number.
So this includes both high school?
One for RCK and one for John Jay.
Thank you.
Mrs. Laval?
The assistant principal positions?
Yes?
The
Okay.
positions, a little detail?
Yeah, sure. I'm in my 3rd year. I know that it's always been an item that has been requested by administrators year after year to have an additional assistant principal. For a school district our size, not to have, for example, at the middle school, each grade level has their own assistant principal. At the high school, we have 3 assistant principals for 4 grade levels. One of the things that we also work on is in the Cohort Model, which is for an assistant principal to start off with their cohort, let's say the 9th grade class, and stay with that 9th grade class all the way through the senior class. What we do now is that we have one of our grade levels, one of the grade levels is shared by 3 assistant principals, and then we continue to provide the house model. The one thing that I'd like to share also is that the administrators, and once again, really thinking about this, the administrators, when they request for an assistant principal, they also request for the assistant principal's secretary. And when we did go and have this conversation, we really talked about really looking at their school buildings and having tried to create a reorganizational structure with their clerical staff, because there's no way that we were going to be able to add those employees. In addition to that, The recommendation will be, as of right now, each high school has a .60, which is a little more than half-time, of a teacher that serves as a dean at each high school. We would eliminate that dean position, which would offset the cost too, so that the high school principals can have their assistant principal.
Mr. Selma?
I think she had another question.
This is extremely loud.
Yeah.
Just trying to do a little reconciling here in my head. We have a 4.7% budget increase, and we saw about $1 million in new heads and personnel and whatnot. And then I briefly brushed through, and there's about $2.5 million increase in overall personnel. Is that budgetary increases and health increases? And I'm just trying to reconcile 4.7 with the million that was more.
Right. So when the previous budget presentations that Ms. Crandall provided, that were broken into the 3 different categories, we shared with you in terms of one of these unfunded state laws, Triborough. So of course, that all gets taken into consideration in terms of the increases that automatically go to WCT. There was a negotiated contract with the WFW. These items have all been pretty much shared into the preliminary presentations that fell under the 3 different categories. Do you want to elaborate? And that's why, so you're right on the ballpark there with that information.
Yeah, we can.
We can't get it right. The increase, budget to budget, is about 2.2%. And the reason why that can be in excess of the 0.12 tax cap calculation, that tax cap rate, is because of exclusions. And we have capital tax exclusions this year, as we have had in past years. The salaries that are budgeted are based on contracts in place or the most recent contract. So if STEP is required, it is there. The health insurance, we actually did, and we shared this with the Board of Education, get a confirmation from the Dutchess Educational Health Insurance Consortium, which is DHIC. That's who we have our health insurance through, that we're looking at a I reported to the board 6.8 because that's what I was told, but I learned today in a memo it's 6.79%. So that is what is reflected in your budget document that you have in front of you. So we have amended that number. And we have used the most up-to-date estimates we have from the teacher's retirement system and the employee's retirement system. I do not have final rates yet for our general municipal insurance amounts, which are also, they have a slight increase from 15-16 to 16-17. And I don't have my workers' comp number yet. So everything you have in this document is up to date through Friday of this past week. And again, every day, any information we get, we're making changes. And I do keep, from the original presentations that were given to you, the draft requests, we keep every change, plus and minus, so that we at any time can say, we did increase this, we decreased this, we increased this, we decreased this. So any questions in that area, we can address.
Let me just say.
You say yours now.
Well, this is not a question, but I would just like to thank Mrs. Crandall because, like Radar on the old TV show MASH, it seems like no matter what time I'm emailing her a question, within 5 seconds or sometimes before I'm done with the email, she's giving me an answer. So she's very good. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple of questions. At the audit committee meeting last week, it was brought up that some of the classes are missing books for classroom libraries, and some of the classes who are reading a book don't have enough copies, so the teachers had to photocopy extra copies of the books. So I'm glad to see that you're putting money into this. is there any way to spend some more money on taking care of these classroom books for the classes? Since books are the most important thing we use.
Actually, we did increase our budget substantially, relatively speaking, because, but talking in terms of the trend that we follow year after year. And as I indicated before, and as Ms. Crandall indicated before, we don't know exactly what's coming from the state. And as I shared with you, there is the two categories that we have, what's sustainable and what will not be sustainable in the event, so that we can provide you with some responsible areas that we'd like to see come back. Some were mentioned this evening, as well as some of the things that can be seed money. One of the items too, along with textbook, and just to share with the board, is that the district has never really had a systemic way to inventory all of their textbooks. Therefore, it is something that Dr. Cardwell in the Curriculum and Instruction Department, we're actually going to, she's already started working on it with her team to make sure that we have a systemic way to inventory all of our textbooks. And it may not seem irrelevant, but it is, because when you do have something set up systemically, you will save money, because then you can account for everything that we have.
Okay, thank you. Also, I'm glad to hear that you're going to try to get those math manipulables. I hear this from teachers and parents that that's really an essential part of the Math and Focus program. And it's something that we've been using in classrooms for many, many years. But it's good to have ones that coordinate with the actual program you're using. Also, the playground equipment, I hope that you're going to be able to help out Myers Corners students with the playground equipment, and the other schools too?
Yes, as you can recall, last year was the start where we started thinking about, and I mean no disrespect to our community, but we really need to take care of our buildings and grounds and our equipment and our furniture. And we've gotten many years basically not really upkeeping and replacing items that should be replaced. Therefore, we do have planned in the budget. However, we were very lucky this year to get a $47,000 savings from BOCES in terms of our phone system with Arlington. And it finally came to fruition. I know that we've been waiting for this. And there's a savings at $47,000, and the intent is to start with Myers and the playground, but continue to have that type of money. And I said this before for the last year's budget. Of course, we have to be fiscally responsible, but we do have a responsibility. It is not for the parents and the community to put out this type of money. But if we can provide the foundation and they want the bells and the whistles, then that's what the parents can continue to work on. But we, as a district, have a responsibility to upkeep and maintain what children should rightfully have in their schools.
Okay, thank you. And I was very glad to see that you were able to include freshman sports in baseball and basketball. Also, I had heard from several people about the possibility of cross-country in the junior highs. Is there any possibility of that?
Right, there's a possibility, and we are being very optimistic about the gap elimination adjustment as well as foundation aid. And as I said before, that was one of the things I alluded to. And it's one of the things that we have on our list. We just want to make sure that we do create a balance of both what I consider the sustainable list and what may not be sustained, so that in the event that we don't have the money, we don't have to say goodbye to things. We can think in different ways, but if we just go for all the things that are not sustainable, then we will have to make some hard choices if we do face a year in the near future where we can't balance the budget.
Okay, also continuing on the subject of athletics, I'm glad to see you included intramurals in the junior high. It's really important to have them also in elementary school and high school, because there are high school students who would really like to do something with a sport, but either because of time commitments or because they didn't make a team, are not able to participate. And it seems as though, since we part of our physical education program is to encourage healthy exercise for life, that high school is the very age when we don't want them to say, oh, well, I'm not an athlete, so I guess I sit here with my video game. So if it's at all possible, I'd like to see those brought in.
As you may recall, last year we did bring back intramurals for the elementary school. The high school, it's a significant cost. So right now, the recommendation as we work together is to prioritize and bring back official sports as freshman sports, but approximately you're talking about $75,000 for intramural sports at the high school level. So it's a high number, but of course we can continue to look at that. And as I said before, this is the recommendation, and it doesn't mean that it's over yet, and we can look at it from different perspectives.
Okay. And finally, I've heard some interest in the community in marching bands at the high schools. How much would that cost?
The marching bands, Dr. Cardwell, we're still waiting on that proposal. Yeah, so the marching bands, there's a lot of people to contact and trying to figure out this number. So it's not a conversation that we haven't had and that we have not stopped having. So we are definitely going to show the board what that cost is as well. There was one time when the district did have a marching band. We know that we can afford 2 marching bands for each high school, but just as they merge to play certain sports, we can see what it would cost in the district and have a marching band for the district as opposed to each high school.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Mr. Root.
I would like to just make a comment, not a question, but I think it's important to note that the budget, as I see here, continues to implement the educational curriculum that we are mandated by Albany to put into effect. It's not a board level decision. So it's a responsibility that this board has to make sure that those directives from Albany are adequately addressed in our district budget, and I believe that this budget has done that. But it's not that we have a say in what Albany dictates that they tell us that we have to do.
Thank you. I'd like to say that just as I believe Trustee Karat and you and Madam President were at the state at the legislation. Yes, so was I with the council that I belong to as superintendents, and we were there just this past Tuesday, really advocating for education and really talking about these unfunded mandates, and that we need our money, we need our state aid, and they need to look at this educational law 3012D with a much closer eye. And so we're there as well. We also posted on our website, as you can see from the council, there is a YouTube presentation. It's on our website that really talks about these unfunded mandates, and I believe it's titled The Last Straw. So there's a lot of work going on with the council to talk to our state legislators, and that's why it's important for the community to get out there and do the same as well.
And the New York State School Boards Association as well.
Yes.
Mrs. Powell.
Mrs. Pelton.
Just quickly, and I'll email other questions, but could you let me know the difference in cost between a organized sport such as cross-country in the junior high and the intramurals?
The organized sports, do you have one for the cross-country?
I don't, but I can explain it.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Just because we did something similar for the freshman sports for baseball and basketball, and just to add to that, the reason why we polled the athletic directors to see where there was an overflow of ninth grade students for freshman sports, and that's how we came up with those two sports. With regard to intramurals, there is not a cost associated with travel, transportation. There's not a uniform cost. There's not a referee cost. There is a stipend to be paid for the teacher or the staff member who would be responsible for that, and it would be held during hours when the building was open, so there wouldn't be a fee associated with that. So it is a different cost, but that intramural is driven by the WCT contract. Those rates are included therein, and as are their hours. So whereas coaching is also driven by the contract, there are extraneous expenses with regard to interscholastic sports.
Thank you.
Just one comment. Being a former cross-country coach at RCK for almost 10 years, I can see the benefit of having cross-country at the elementary school level. In fact, as coaches at the time, we used to go to the junior high, the ninth graders, and tell them there was only go a cross-country team and catch them. I think it'd be beneficial to those coaches, president coaches, to have a program at the junior high where kids can compete. And I would like to see that. I think it's extremely beneficial. And it's definitely improved programs at both John Jay and Ketchum.
Okay, so for the next meeting that we have, and we discuss the budget, we will make sure that we will show you what it looks like in terms of finances and fitting it in and trying to balance it into the budget so that the board can see that item.
I just want to clarify. Dr. Risley.
Yeah, I just want to clarify one thing. You just said that you're going to increase the budget for the textbook. Is that right?
No. No, what I indicated was that if the gavel elimination adjustment goes away and we get additional foundation aid or that we will have additional funds to be able to look at what it is in terms of the areas we know we have to continue to work on in terms of textbooks.
Because I think we should emphasize on student reading the textbook, because the textbooks give a very strong foundation as compared to giving worksheets to the student. So I'm just saying the emphasis should be more on reading the textbook to get a strong base. That's what my comment is.
And as I said before, we have increased it more so than it has in previous years.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think the next item is 6.01, vehicle replacement.
This is a presentation that we do annually. It's based on a request for our transportation fleet to keep it as up to date as possible. And it will be brief. I will not hold a lot of time as we try to maintain level funding throughout this process so that it has no significant impact to the budget and or taxpayers. Some simple facts about transportation. We have 15 in-district buildings, and we transport out to approximately 135 programs in out-of-district schools. We currently transport approximately 12,118 students. We have a fleet of 252 vehicles, which is comprised of 20 and 28 passenger vehicles, the large buses you see on the road, as well as 7 passenger cars and vans. And we have included what the miles traveled in 14-15 and 13-14 have been relatively similar, no significant increases in that area, and that is something that we do monitor as we move forward into the next year's budget process using the best estimates based on historical data that we have available. This scenario that I'm showing you, and we will go forward with for the Board of Education to review, would be the same regardless of whatever transportation scenario we were in, whether it was a 3-tier or a 2-tier scenario, the same request would be in place. Part and parcel of what transportation does on a regular basis is review for efficiencies, and that's something that the Board of Education has deemed as a goal in the 15-16 school year. So as part and parcel, routing efficiencies are always being researched. Correcting bus stop anomalies, things that kind of seem okay until the buses actually start rolling. In the past, we haven't really made a lot of those changes mid-year, but we are implementing that and making changes as we see them. Why wait? We're making corrections as we need to. We're also looking into creating community stops for after-school secondary runs. Currently, we drop at everybody's house as we go through the community on after-school runs. So we're looking to create community stops, and we will share that so that it's within boundaries. There's actually no rules as per New York State for after-school runs, but we will definitely adhere to district policy with regard to how we set these up and how we announce them and publicize them to the public. Currently, Vassar Road and Kinry Road share morning bus rides, but they have afternoon runs that are separate. We've looked in the past trying to combine this. This year, for 16-17, that's going to happen. We will have combined runs for Vassar and Kinry in the afternoon. We're also continuing to review hubbing of private parochial schools. Currently, the 4 schools listed do not hub. We're looking at scenarios. We're not saying that's going to happen, but we're definitely looking into that to see if there are any efficiencies to be found without adding any significant impact or having any significant impact to families. We are also looking for future purchases of our vehicles to be either propane or gasoline powered vehicles. Local districts do have propane and or gasoline powered vehicles, and we're kind of waiting to see how they're doing with regard to those vehicles as we move forward. These are large investments, and we want to make sure we're doing the best for the district. So in the 16-17 year, we are asking for 24 vehicles comprised of the large passenger buses, 13 of those, 1 7-passenger van, and 10 20-passenger vans, for a total proposition of $1,919,869. What I would like to share is in the past, you've seen it fluctuate our requests, and a lot of times it's related to the needs of all the times it's related to the needs of our students, and we've seen swings where we've had to purchase more smaller vehicles in order to be able to meet these needs. What we are looking to replace with those 24 are 26 vehicles that have on average of 13 to 17 years of service, and the average mileage is between 178,000 and 217,000 miles. Our smaller vehicles, the 10 vans, you'll see may not be as old in years, but they have traveled many more miles, and that's because a lot of them go to those out-of-district programs. So I'd like to show you pictures of rust and holes in vehicles. There's door rust on the left-hand side. That's vehicle number 654. It's a 2000-year vehicle. And on 692 on the right, that's a 2002 vehicle. And remember, whenever there's a hole discovered during an inspection in the frame that's non-repairable, that bus comes off the road and cannot be put back on the road. It will not pass New York State DOT inspections, which are happening 3 days a week, Kim? 3 days a week? 2 days a week. So we have DOT inspections happening 2 days a week at our Fishkill Plains facility. So we're constantly taking vehicles and having them reviewed by New York State. So the next question is, how do we pay for this? We have used 5-year bond anticipation rolling notes. And what that means is that they're short-term borrowings, renewed annually, and we keep the debt service level. So if you take the total proposition request, which was 1.9 million, divided by 5, you get $383,974. Transportation state aid is 53.4%. That would come back to us in the form of building aid in a following year. So the net cost of this transportation prop would be $178,932. I would like to commend the transportation department as well as the purchasing department. They worked hard with these vendors this year to get the most we could get for the best money. And we had $11,000 per large vehicle, I believe it was, shaved off the top based on negotiations. So it's great. It led us to be able to purchase one of the smaller vehicles that we did need. We do have our budget website. You can use that. Our email, please use that for any questions with regard to this transportation prop as well. And we will be asking for the Board of Education's approval for this proposition this evening. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Rubin.
Mr. Mike.
Share this
Not a question, just an observation, but if we're looking to combine the runs for Vassar, Canby Road schools together, that would just seem intuitive, though, that the start and stop times for those two schools could not be exactly the same. They would, the start and stop times would have to be adjusted based upon the availability of buses for each, when the buses arrive. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was wondering for the future, our new transportation facilities, will that improve maintenance and perhaps extend the life of our vehicles?
The fact that all of our vehicles are parking on blacktop, they're no longer parking in mud-covered fields. That's not something I can give you a one-year. Rust accumulates over time. But I can tell you that it is very efficient, the system that Supervisor Catalano has in place, because those vehicles that need to be serviced on a DOT day, which is up to 16 vehicles, give or take, per week, 16 vehicles per week, right, 16 vehicles per week are there, ready to go, they're parked, there's space, they're brought right in, they're pulled right out, they're cleaned as necessary, with the bus wash that we have so that all the grease and grime is off of them, inspections can be done. So yes, we have efficiencies. I can't tell you about rust yet. That's not something I can do. But you'll see the transportation budget did not increase significantly, which means that we were able to add a position and also be able to maintain the facilities.
I did have one other question about, I noticed there was a significant increase in mileage between 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016. It seemed, well, I mean 2013, 2014, and 2014, 2015. What was the reason for that? Do we have more out-of-district busing, or what is it?
We do have out-of-district placements, and we have had to increase those smaller vehicles in district as well for students with special needs. So that combined, it's, in all honesty, that's not a huge increase that you see. I can definitely give you over several years, but that's not a significant, huge increase. That was a flashing red light to say what's going on.
Mrs. Pelton.
Just a comment about the Kimmery Vassar sharing that bus ride. It's been my experience in the schools my children have attended that dismissals are not done exactly the same at the schools. Some schools dismiss the pickups first, some schools dismiss the buses first. So maybe altering or offsetting that might be an answer or a solution.
Something we've also looked at because we don't have that uniformity. It's all in the process.
Mrs. Laval.
Can you tell me the rationale for hubbing the parochial and private schools?
The rationale is the same that we have for the other schools that do hub with regard to private parochials. It is a cost savings. Again, we have a lot of students from this area, in a centralized area, that will be attending Some may not be hubbed because those schools are so close to where they currently live. But we have some students that are really on the far outside outreaches, and that's what we're looking at. So it's a cost-saving measure, but again, being measured and weighted against any potential impact to families. We're not looking to increase bus rides significantly. We're not looking to increase the amount of time that a student is on a vehicle. We're really just trying to we're doing homework to see if it'll work. And I'm not being offensive, I'm just trying to make notes behind you if I turn it back to you.
But what is it about the private and parochial schools that make them more, you're inclined to hub those students?
Because we have students who could live out on Stormville Mountain that go to St. Mary's Fishkill, for example, or St. Columba. So if we have those types of students, right now they don't hub, they have their own vehicle that brings them in. So we're really looking to try to find a way. Some of them it won't work. But if we have a lot of students in one area that we can hub and then find a way to just to make a more direct route, save a few dollars and not cause any significant impact. That's what we're looking at. It's really a cost savings versus cost benefit.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Crandall. And Mr. Carrion.
That's okay. She really did a great job for us.
The next item is 6.02, approval of the transportation proposition.
Resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District authorizes the submission of the following proposition for the qualified voters of the district to vote on at the annual district meeting, budget vote, and election to be held on May 17, 2016. Shall the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District, Putnam and Dutchess Counties, New York, quote, district, be authorized to purchase student transportation vehicles at a maximum exceeded sum of estimated sum of $1,919,869, and said amount for so much thereof as may be necessary shall be raised by the levy of a tax upon the taxable property of the district and collected in annual installments as approved by law, and for which obligations of the district may be issued.
Could I have a motion, please? Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Soma. Discussion. All in favor? Unanimous. 6.03, change in scope presentation.
Okay, so we'll move to our next presentation, just to provide the Board of Education with some historical facts. These were items taxpayers were all there. So taxpayers were guaranteed that all rental properties would be eliminated from the WCSD school district budget. The Board of Education and the WCSD were able to fulfill this promise by eliminating Airport Drive rental. May 18, 2015, proposition number 3 failed. Rental properties for students of Orchard View Alternative High School and the central office administration. That continues to occur. Historical facts. In May 2013, voters approved a $38 million capital improvement project. $3 million was allocated for Orchard View High School and district office to eliminate space, rental elimination. Anticipated result, utilize school district property to accommodate the central office of approximately 65 employees, utilize school district property to accommodate the Orchard View High School. Historical facts. July 1st, 2015, central office administrators and Orchard View High School students moved from 167 Myers Corners Road to 25 Corporate Park Drive in Hopewell Junction, New York. The rental cost was decreased by approximately $600,000. What now? Do we place the purchase of the 25 Corporate Drive as a proposition on the WCSD budget vote May 17, 2016? If yes, change the language, which is what was there last year, renovate and reconstruct to purchase of property. Cost factor is $0, no additional cost to the district. What can be done with an additional $390,000 that's presently being utilized for rent? The district will be, and I believe this question was asked and this answer was given, will be fiscally responsible and utilize the funds to reduce the debt service. And that, in a nutshell, is the presentation. Any questions?
Mrs. Karat. Okay, so let's go over the $390,000 in rent. How is that going to be parceled to the mortgage payments?
Sure. So as I had indicated, the rental is currently budgeted in general fund budget lines. There is a separate line called transfer to debt service, which is also included in the general fund budget. It's on the last page. What would happen if and when this is approved by the voters? A $390,000 transfer would be generated. Memo would come to the Board of Education requesting that $390,000 transfer to occur, and the money would be moved. We would close on the building as close to July 1st as possible, fund that payment, make the payment in full, and take out the serial bond to pay for the balance of that it'll be less than $3 million, $2.5 million. We have not bonded for that money at this point in time because we haven't spent it. So this is funds left from the $38 million project in May of 2013, which was part of the original proposal and allocated specifically for that purpose.
Could you just, in general terms, could you give us an idea for monthly cost when you're talking about a debt service on the purchase versus the monthly rental?
Sure. So if we have a monthly rental of an annual rental of $390,000, we currently do pay all of the other utilities and for that building, as well as propane and any other costs. So the monthly charges wouldn't change besides the rent. So the debt service payment is approximately $140,000 per year. So where we have $390,000 budgeted, we'd have $250,000 in that first year to pay down that debt service even further. So it would be approximately $10,000 or $12,000 and change in debt service versus $390 divided by 12. I can't do that in my head off the top, but it's significantly more. And we own the building.
Thank you. Mr. Lumia.
I think it's extremely important to the community to understand that 3 years ago, whenever it was, the capital improvement project was passed, and at that time, the community agreed to construct or reconstruct. We tried to construct and reconstruct for it, and the price came in to be $4.1 million, I believe. Only $3 million was appropriated, so obviously the board could not do it. For those who are opposed about purchasing the building, to me, it makes no sense. We are spending $390,000 every year to rent this place. Money that can be used to reduce the payment for the capital improvement projects. And so it seems to me that it's a no-brainer. For anybody who says it is, I think that you better look at your facts. $390,000 of rentals is costing every year for this building. We could have purchased it last year, and we could have saved already $390,000. So it seems to me, I sincerely hope that we do a better job explaining to the community exactly what we are getting for that $390,000. And most importantly, to understand the committee approved the original capital improvement project. The problem was the language at that time said construct and reconstruct. I wish he had not said that, because I think at that time the community would have understood that the elimination of rentals was going to pay for the capital improvement projects and then save some of the 18-year period. And I think perhaps at some future day you can present that slide to show the actual savings would have incurred by all capital, all elimination rentals.
Mr. Lumia, just as a reminder, we had to include language at that point in
I'm
time.
aware.
Okay,
I'm aware.
I'm just reiterating, I want to make sure
I'm
we're on
aware.
the same page. And also, as to why we're doing this now, because we have a 2-year lease, and we have to let the landlord know in February of 2017 what our intentions are. So it's not like we have an opportunity to bring this to the taxpayers again. That is why it's on the proposition for May of 2016.
Anyone else? Mrs. Laval, did you have a question?
I was just wondering if we were asking questions or if this was the discussion. Was under the impression it was
You
questions.
can ask any question you want, I guess.
Okay, I guess anything you wish to ask. It's a presentation, so you can ask questions about it. Yes.
I don't have any questions for the district.
Dr. Risby.
If we have any plan to purchase the building, it will accommodate Orchard View School also? That's a part of that, purchasing a building.
The other piece that, in terms of the reconstruct and construct, in a very short minute, this administration had found themselves really trying to really figure out the plans for that, and we successfully went through really creating plans for a project that we could not afford. I think it's important as a former principal myself, and also understanding that we kept our word to the Myers community. We met with the Myers community. We understood that there were things that were extremely important for us to really consider as we were looking to reconstruct and renovate. When I believe Trustee Pelton mentioned about the dismissal process, different school buildings and their structure require different things to happen in a different way also. So in terms of how cars can come into a building, we wanted to make sure, that's one prime example, that the cars that were coming in to enter for central office staff would not get in the way of the Myers community as a school. So all of these things that we had discussed, we sat down with, we have so many indicators, bullets that were listed in terms of the things that we knew, and we reached consensus we would make sure not happen or happen. We stuck to that, and that's why this project was not a cheap project to undertake.
Okay, any other questions? I just, to put it in simple terms, since most of us are homeowners, you're basically saying that rather than pay $390,000 a year in rent, we can buy the building for and pay $145,000 a year, basically in a mortgage. They call it a little different, but it's basically pay it off, and have $245,000 additional money to spend. So that's saying basically that for less than half what we're paying for rent, we can actually own the building. And then if we ever didn't need it, we'd have something which we could actually sell. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just one question.
Dr.
So
Risby.
the mortgage money is going to be $145,000 a year?
That's the principal and interest
Yeah.
payments on average.
And how many years it's going
25
to be?
years.
25.
Yes, standard long-term borrow.
Okay, thanks.
Was that, excuse me, was that supposed to be a over 18-year period, I believe it was? The original proposition that was presented?
I believe so, sir, yes.
Also, I assume that when the lease is up, and we still wanted to rent, the landlord would be quite able to raise the rent if he wants to, right?
We have that negotiated as well, and I don't have that off the top of my head, but it is another 2 years at an increased rate, not through the roof like we had at 167 Myers Corners, but there is an increase to the rent, and I could go back and probably find that in a previous presentation given to the board if you'd like.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. 6.04, approval of change in scope proposition.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District authorizes the submission of the following proposition for the qualified voters of the district to vote on at the annual district meeting, budget vote, and election to be held on May 17, 2016. Shall the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District be authorized to expend the sum of $2,550,463 to purchase the real property and improvement it currently leases for school district central administrative offices and classrooms, for which real property is located at 25 Corporate Park Drive, Hopewell Junction, New York, the cost of which purchase will be financed by obligations that the qualified voters of the school district already approved and authorized to be issued at the maximum estimated cost of $38,715,000 on May 21st, 2013 to construct and reconstruct various school district facilities and sites.
Could I have a motion, please? Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Soma, discussion. Mrs. Laval.
There are significant of additional concerns which the community voiced when this proposition was put on the ballot last year. This was not a simple math calculation. Our community is capable of doing simple math in their head. There were a number of different things that went on last year. The community told us plainly they did not want to reorganize the district. The district spent money and time and resources putting through a reorganization the community didn't want. They said no to this proposition, which they have every right to do. It was put on a ballot. The voters spoke. It was more than a message of we want we want to rent. That's not what they said. They said, stop spending our money and making decisions that affect our children and our community without listening to what we want for our children and our community. For the last 3 years, schools come up every year, and we talk about closing them. So is the district closing a school to make room for their district offices? Or do we really have a census concern, and are we going to buy a building and then close a school and then have an empty building? This was put to the voters, and the voters said no. And it's not because they don't understand the concept of lease versus buy. They want the attention of the board and the district to their concerns. We're spending tons of money on curriculum and data collection and teacher rating systems that the community does not want, on technology the community is not interested in having. And the community sent a message to the district and the board that they want a response to their concerns. This wasn't about math. It wasn't even about money. And to the extent that it's about money, we're still spending their money on things they don't want. So when you say to them, we're going to save you $230,000 a year, we're talking about our children. They're not for sale. If we have to spend a little extra money to get the attention that they're looking for their children, they're apparently willing to do it. And I don't think it's appropriate for this board to just say to the public, we don't believe you when you say you don't want us to buy this building. We're just going to keep putting it up until we get you to say yes.
Please, no comments from the audience. You're welcome to make them at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Any other board members? Mr. Rubin.
Mrs. Lavelle, I agree with you. I also heard from people who are struggling to stay in their homes. And every dollar that this district can save and use as a result to affect the budget, to minimize any increases, they are looking to ask us, they are asking us to do that as well. So although there are people that come here, and I applaud them for coming and expressing their opinion, there are people who maybe don't come here, they're working 2 jobs, and they have also mentioned, at least to myself, that it is a struggle to stay in their home. This is an expensive area, and they're asking us to do what we can to keep the budget in line. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyone else? Mrs. Laval.
They're asking us to save the money. There's no reason we can't save their money on the things they want us to save money on. And they voted. So it's not the group of people who come here. You know, there wasn't 6 people or 10 people or 20 people who voted on this. The district voted on it. And the majority of the people who voted in the district voted no. So I have all the empathy in the world for the people who are struggling to stay in their homes. My heart breaks for them. I'm well aware of them. But there are places that we can save them money that we choose not to. So to hold this up as the holy grail of places to save money for the taxpayers is inappropriate, in my opinion.
On the subject of saving money, we had the opportunity a month ago to save $280,000 a year minimum on buses, on bus transportation by switching to a 2-tier system. I have been flooded with comments from people since then who were amazed that the board did not choose to do so, and said that they didn't make any comments because it was such a logical idea that they had just assumed that the board would approve it. So there are other ways of saving money, but we have to choose one of them, or 2 or 3 or whatever. And so far the board has not been choosing things that save money. And I agree with Mr. Rubin. As far as the children are concerned, their academic programs, their extracurriculars, I'd like to safe transportation, their safety in any way. Yes, I think we need to spend that money. But when we see an opportunity to save money, and it's not something that will harm the children or detract from their education and their other experiences, I think we need to do it, because the property taxes in New York State are the highest in the country, and they're a real detriment to the people who live here and to businesses, and we have to take that into consideration and try all we can to live within our means without harming the education of the children. Mrs. Laval.
The voters said no. It wasn't the board's decision. We put it on the ballot, and the voters said no. And the decision that the board does have is with regard to the reform that's being rammed through and the board refuses to oppose. So if the board really wants to save money for the taxpayers, then they can look at where we're being forced to spend money that the community doesn't want, and we can save money where the community wants us to save it, and not where the board wants the community to say yes and the community already said no.
All right, on that subject, I think the superintendent and other people have told you various times that we have unfunded mandates. They just mentioned it. And now on the district website is a YouTube presentation on unfunded mandates, I think you said, Mr. Carrion?
Oh, the last straw?
Yes, the last straw. I would advise all members of the community to look at it, and if there are unfunded mandates that you see listed there that you think are unnecessary to be mandated and something that should be left to the choice of our district, I urge you to contact, if it's a law, your state legislators, and if it's a regulation, the Board of Regents. Mrs. Karath reminded everyone that on April 7th, our member of the Board of Regents will be speaking at Arlington High School, and it's open to the community. You can submit questions in advance, and you can come anyway. So I suggest if there are any unfunded mandates that you disapprove of, please contact them or come to the meeting. As it is, we have to follow the law and the regulations. That's our job. Are there any other comments?
Actually, I do have one. Yes,
Yes, Mrs. Laval.
There's nothing that prohibits this board from addressing the concerns as a board to the legislature and to the regions. And so whether or not we're mandated to implement them does not say that we cannot, as a board, express the voice of our community who have plainly told us what they want in the way that you suggest that the individual community members do. Instead, the board passed a resolution without telling the community that they were doing it, purported to represent the community when the community didn't have an opportunity to express their position on the statement. So we can play semantics and split hairs if you want to, but the community is well aware of the fact that while you're telling them that there's nothing you can do, you're doing something that they want you not to do, that you don't have to do. You didn't have to pass that resolution. You're right. We can oppose these things, but we can do it as the elected representatives of the community who want us to, and you've chosen not to. And so it rings fairly hollow when you suggest that we're forced to do this and that the community should go alone without their elected representatives to oppose the issues.
If the community goes on the website, on the first page of the district website, are both resolutions that this board passed this year. If you read that, click on them and read them, you will see that we raised in those resolutions the changes and the objections and the things that we thought should be improved on the state level. Also, based upon what we were told by the community, by teachers, parents, and other community members. And there were several things in both resolutions that we mentioned that we thought needed changing. 3 members of this board went to Albany, as did the superintendent, and spoke with our representatives and spent a good half hour, in our case, with each of our representatives talking over this. We raised the issue of unfunded mandates and the other things that we're concerned with, which we know our community is concerned with, justifiably, in my opinion. And we got as much a reception. They were very polite and listened, but of course we know that they're just individual legislators and they don't have the whole control. But definitely when people speak to their legislators and to the governor and to the Board of Regents, it does have an effect. If you've been following the news, there are changes being made in a lot of the things which most of the community found distressing about the tests, about teacher evaluations, about the implementation of the new standards. And this has been, I think it's gotten through to them up in Albany because there are changes, and there are more changes that will come. And that's very good, and I think we can thank the people in the community and who speak out because this does have an effect. All right, all in favor? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Pelton, Mrs. Karath, Mr. Rubin, Mr. Soma, Dr. Rizvi, and Mrs. Kelland. Opposed? Mrs. Laval. 6.05, capital project presentation.
As I have indicated to the board, the presentation that was given, you received the presentation, a very detailed presentation from our architect, Mr. Phil Zemke, who's here, along with our Director of Facilities and Operation, Mr. Ross. And what we're providing you right at this point, we did have conversations, questions were asked. So what we're providing right now is the funding sources. And we showed you at the presentation, during the presentation, that there was a priority to fund priority 1, just improvements only, or doing priorities 1 and 2, improvements, which would be inclusive of many of the items that were on that very detailed presentation. If you have any questions, Mr. Zemke is here along with our director.
Any questions? Mrs. Karan? Since it's my first time looking at or being involved in this, 2013 was the last capital project that the board approved, correct? And that was for somewhere in the neighborhood of 38 million. And the combined priority 1 and 2 would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 26.5 or $26.7 million. Okay, and what I did was I looked at how many tasks, if you would put it in a punch list of what priority 1 was, and I came up with about 80 tasks that need to be bonded, which would be in the orange on the original, and in the second, it's a combination of just under 199 tasks for the 26.7 amount to work with. Did we experience with the 2013 capital project, how many tasks, you know, if I was here looking at it, how did it compare in terms of, you know, when you look at what you're going to try to accomplish, which I think is really laudable with the 26.7 million, was it more than 100 different items spread over the 15 buildings?
No, I don't believe it was over 100. But what you got to realize is the state takes 44 weeks to approve some projects. Some projects get approved in 10 weeks, depending on the project. So this will be stretched over 3 years. So even though it's 100 tasks, it's going to be stretched over 3 years.
So, this is normal in terms of the amount of activity that you would expect to accomplish in 3 years.
I have every confidence that we can complete this in 3 years. You'll have punch list items going through the 3rd year, but yes, I believe you can do it.
The scope of the 2013 project was different in that it addressed some facility issues at every building, at every site, but it also built the new transportation facility and created new parking for the buses. So that was in addition to the typical facility improvements that one would do in a capital project. This project consists of similar capital improvements that are maintenance items, roads and driveways, windows, but it also includes improvements to your buildings to provide accessibility for the handicap, which is one of those projects that hadn't been done in this district for quite some time. So I think there are 9 buildings that don't have fully accessible toilet rooms for handicapped, and there are 4 buildings that would require elevators. So that's part of this project. So it's really hard to compare the 2013 laundry list of items with this one because they're based on the needs that are determined and then also based on the review of the items that are presented to the facilities committee and the board. And I think that the selection of all of these items were through the committees, and that was what was felt was important.
Is there carryover? Are there some items on here that were items that did not get accomplished within the last project?
As a matter of fact, the district was able to achieve about $800,000 more in scope due to savings through the bidding process and design as we went through. And there is a surplus left over. If you remember my presentation from January, there was money available to pay for some of the improvements that we're doing right now.
Okay, good. I just needed this for better understanding. Thank you.
Just for my information, priority ones have to be addressed, correct? Are all priority one items, what percent of that to be addressed?
No. The athletic fields are in priority ones.
I noticed that the athletic field is, it's only for John Jay. What happened to the one at Ketchum?
No, it's in there.
It's in there?
They're both
Yeah.
in there.
It's in one.
The other piece too, if I might say, is that prior to even the first presentation, there was a presentation in one of our workshops where we reviewed the entire building condition survey. The building condition survey, we have to do that every 5 years. So what this is really telling us that every 5 years, we have not done a lot that's required that has been indicated in the building condition survey. So when you look at those number of items, you're also looking at items that we really have to address so that we can be in compliance in terms of with the ADA. And I don't think that, I wasn't here in 2013, but I don't think that the building condition survey did not play an integral role to creating that capital improvement project, to the different priorities, right, exactly.
Mr. Rubin.
And that original capital equipment made a great difference in terms of what we're seeing. Just drive around the district, you can see that. If we walk around the district like the school board does in the summertime, just prior to school opening, you'll see that, at least I've noticed, that there have been vast upgrades in the condition of the building, but there are still things that need to be done. You can look around and see tiling, look up and see ceiling tiling. I would just ask, though, that when you plan to make accommodations for the handicap, not all handicaps are necessarily visible. There are resources out there. Dr. Bond and I had attended earlier an event sponsored by Taconic Resources. Whatever the appropriate community resources that may be able to help us identify what our needs are, I would suggest that we look at those resources. There's hearing rooms as an example for hearing impaired. I don't know how that impacts the district. The town of Poughkeepsie Town Hall has that, and it was not an expensive addition for their town hall to put that in. But I would just suggest that to the degree possible, there are people out there who might be able to have a different perspective on what's required in those areas. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have a concern. Well, we're still in proposition 6.6. I'll wait until 6.8 for the resolution of the capital project proposition. It seems to me the concern that I have is whether we should have two propositions as opposed to just one proposition.
Meaning that
And for example, things have to be addressed. For example, ADA compliance. We have to address those issues. Those are issues which we have to address. But there are other issues which I think do not have to necessarily be addressed. We should be, but I think the community should have a say as to whether we want to address them or not.
One thing you gotta worry about when you do things like that is, if you're talking about your athletic fields or anything like that, you will not get aid on those unless you do a project within your building. So if you do a minimum of $10,000 project, you'll get aid on your athletic fields. Certain site work you will not get aid on unless you do a building project within your building. So this could cost you some money if you just pick and choose, and you'll never end up getting your athletic fields or any of your site work done without it. You know, you'd be paying it full price.
Is there a reason why the field at Ketchum was not addressed in the $26 million? Is it addressed there?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Where exactly, please? I don't see it.
Both John
Maybe
Day
I'm blind.
and Ketchum.
On the Ketchum one, it should be in one of the bottom lines.
Where?
it's in the original.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about these resolutions. I understand
Those are
that.
your secrets, Mr. Lumia. There's secrets that need to be addressed because of lighting at John Jay with regard to the fields.
Do we have to do a secret so far as the field house that has to be built there?
I think it's in 6.07 that it's addressed. First, we have to do the seeker on,
Okay.
okay.
That's fine.
One thing is, I think it's very important when we do the capital project that we address all necessary improvements and maintenance, because one of the reasons we have so much capital work to do in this district was years and years, decades of deferred maintenance, and we let things go to seed. And again, speaking as a homeowner, I know, you decide, oh, we'll do a fix in the roof for another year, and you have a lot bigger expense than if you took care of it right away. So I hope that when we do both priority 1 and 2, that we are addressing all the important things that we need to do to prevent greater expense.
The board did approve last year a preventive maintenance mechanic, which is on the board agenda today. It is another preventive maintenance mechanic is in the budget for next year. And we're such a big district. These two gentlemen are going around servicing all the equipment, HVAC equipment, exhaust fans. Time they get all the way around the district, would be time for them to start all over again. So that's going to be their sole job, is preventive maintenance.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. 6.06, approval to declare the district-wide capital project a Type 2 secret action.
I'm going to start charging you about the words. Whereas the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District is considering a district-wide capital improvement project to renovate, rehabilitate, and reconstruct Royce Ketchum High School, John Jay High School, Van Wyck Junior High School, Wappingers Junior High School, Brinkerhoff Elementary School, Fishkill Elementary School, Fishkill Plains Elementary School, Gayhead Elementary School, James S. Evans Elementary School, Kinney Road Elementary School, Myers Corners Elementary School, Oak Grove Elementary School, Sheep Road Elementary School, Vassar Road Elementary School, the main bus garage, and facilities and operations, including but not limited to renovations/replacements/repairs of interior classrooms, theater and music arts rooms, auditoriums and lockers, interior and exterior site accessibility, renovations, replacements, upgrades, drainage, roadway, and parking improvements, heating, air conditioning, and ventilation and electrical system replacements, upgrades, storm drainage repairs, replacements, windows replacements, unit ventilator replacements, and floor tile replacements. How do I read that? Parentheses, proposed action, end of parentheses. And whereas the proposed action qualifies as a Type 2 action set forth in 6 NYCRR Part 617.5 State Environmental Quality Review Act, ASEQRA, because it involves a replacement, reconstruction, and or rehabilitation involving no substantial changes or expansion beyond 10,000 square feet of existing structures and or facilities. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District hereby declares that the proposed action is a Type 2 action and therefore not subject to further review under 6 NYCRR Part 617 et C.
Could we have a motion, please? Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Soma. Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. 6.07, approval of determination of significance, negative declaration for proposed John Jay High School and Roy C. Ketchum High School synthetic turf field and lighting system improvement project.
Yes, whereas the Board of Education, parentheses, Board, end of parentheses, of the Wappinger Central School District, parentheses, district, end of parentheses, is proposing a capital improvement project that may include installation of new synthetic turf fields, parentheses, John Jay High School and Roy C. Ketchum High School, end of parentheses, and installation of a new exterior lighting system, parentheses, Roy C. Ketchum High School, parentheses again, collectively referred to hereinafter as the proposed action, end of parentheses. And whereas the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SEQRA, and the regulations thereunder require that the board undertake a review of the potential environmental impacts, if any, associated with the proposed action before approving it, including classifying the action and declaring lead agency. And whereas the board, in accordance with SEQRA, having classified the project as an unlisted action and having determined itself as lead agency for the SEQRA uncoordinated review of the proposed action, circulated Part 1 of the full environmental assessment form, parentheses, FEAF, end of parentheses, and other supporting documentation to all known involved agencies and afforded the agencies 30 calendar days to respond. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the board determines that based upon the record before it, including parts 1, 2, and 3 of the FEAF, the proposed action will result in no significant adverse environmental impacts for the reasons stated in the FEAF, and be it further resolved that the board directs its consultant to file and publish its determinations of significance in the form of a secret negative declaration in accordance with 6 NYCRR 617.12.
Could I have a motion, please? Mr. Lumia. Second, Mr. Silva. Discussion? All those in favor? Oops, excuse me. Yes, Mr. Rubin.
I have a question that if the board decides to not vote for artificial turf and maintains a natural turf field, the artificial turf purchase is reimbursable by the state, but if we were to say resod and we see the field that's not reimbursable, or is it? If the field were to be resodded on a continual basis.
If that work is included in a project that includes work inside the building, you can get paid for that.
But not continuous.
I'm sorry?
Not continuous.
It would be building aid.
Continuous.
Not if you resod.
Not if you resod.
Not the maintenance.
Not the maintenance of it. No, but if you're redoing the field, in its entirety, it's an entire system. It's not just a repair. It's not just a reseeding. It's redoing that entire field. I believe that it would be eligible.
Right, but the artificial turf has a life expectancy of, say, 10, 12, 13 years or so. Whereas I don't think you get that out of natural turf. And to keep the same quality of the field there, you would have to do, I would think, a significant resodding process every year.
The field maintenance is not paid.
Right.
Right. That's right.
Okay. States require 18 years.
Right. The warranties on artificial fields have now been extended to meet the SED requirements.
Okay. 18 years. Yeah.
But you're right. The installation of the coverage is a building aid project, but the maintenance is not.
Maintenance is not.
Could I have a motion? Mrs. Belton. Second. Mrs. Karath. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. 6.08, approval of resolution authorizing inclusion of capital project proposition at annual school district meeting and election.
Be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District, Dutchess and Putnam Counties, New York, as follows. Section 1. The proposition hereinafter set forth is hereby authorized to be submitted for the approval of the qualified voters at the annual school district election to be held in said school district on the 17th of May, 2016. Section 2. The school district clerk is hereby authorized and directed to include as part of the notice of the annual district meeting and election notice with reference to the submission of said proposition in substantially the following form. Notice is hereby further given that at said annual election to be held on May 17, 2016, the following propositions will be submitted. Shall the Board of Education of the Wappinger Central School District, Dutchess and Putnam Counties, New York, be authorized to construct improvements to and reconstruct various school district buildings and facilities, including original furnishings, equipment, machinery, apparatus, appurtenances, athletic field and other site improvements and other incidental improvements and expenses in connection therewith at a maximum estimated cost of $26,723,000, and said amount or so much thereof as may be necessary shall be raised in the levy of tax upon the taxable property of said school district and collected in annual installments as provided by Section 416 of the State Education Law and in anticipation of such tax obligations of said school district shall be issued. The school district has acted as lead agency under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, regulations of the State of New York, the installation of new synthetic turf fields at John Jay High School and Roy C. Ketchum High School, and installation of a new exterior lighting system at Roy C. Ketchum High School. Hereby to be authorized has been determined to be an unlisted action pursuant to the regulations of New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, promulgated pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, (SEQRA), as to which a full environmental assessment form and other supporting documentation has been prepared, and as to which it has been determined that said unlisted action will result in no significant adverse environmental impacts. The district-wide capital improvement project to construct improvements and to reconstruct various school buildings and facilities hereby to be authorized has been determined to be a Type 2 action pursuant to said SEQRA regulations, the implementation of which is as proposed. Such regulations provide will result in no significant adverse environmental impacts. Section 3. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Could I have a motion, please? Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Soma, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. 6.09, approval of budget for John Jay High School baseball dugouts.
Can I just say something?
Yes, Mr. Carrion.
There's no presentation. This is just a formality. You already approved the dugouts. This is just to approve the bids and the budget for the dugouts.
So we need to read it.
Yes, you do, but I didn't want you to think we started building dugouts without your permission. You had already approved them.
Thank you. Whereas a referendum was approved by the voters, whereas a referendum was approved by the voters on May 21st, 2013, in part for the soliciting for the replacement of baseball dugouts at John Jay High School. Whereas bids for this work were advertised on January 22nd, 2016, received and publicly opened on February 11th, 2016. Whereas budgets for this project have now been estimated by the district's architect, therefore be it resolved that upon recommendation of the Executive Director for Finance and Business Development to the Superintendent of Schools, these projects be authorized as estimated and recommended by the district architect and as contained herein. Do I have to read through these or no?
Do we have a motion? Mr. Selman, do we have a second? Mrs. Laval? Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. 6.10, approval of legal notice for May 2016 budget vote and board member election.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the legal notice for the May 17, 2016 budget vote and the board member election as stated.
Could I have a motion, please? Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Selma, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Next item is the consent agenda. Does anyone want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Okay.
Resolved that the Board of Education does hereby approve the following consent agenda items as stated. 7.02, 7.03, 7.04, 7.05, 7.06, 7.07, 7.08, 7.09, 7.10, and 7.11.
Could we have a motion, please? Mrs. Pelton. Second, Mrs. Karat. All those in favor? Unanimous. Yes, I'm going to ask them, and we're going to be the members, okay. 8.01. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Mr. Rubin.
I move to amend the agenda to add a resolution regarding the approval of a settlement proposal.
Do I have a second on the motion to amend the agenda? Mr. Lumia. Mr. Rubin, would you please read the motion for the record?
We need a vote on the amendment.
Oh, we need a vote, sorry. Okay, all right, okay. Right, we're voting to add this to the agenda. Thank you. All right, all those in favor? Unanimous. Actually, Mrs. Pelton is not here, right? So that would be everyone except Mrs. Pelton. Yes. Okay. Would you please read the motion? Thank you.
Resolved that all claims regarding an impartial hearing brought by the parents of student number 29187 be resolved by payment in the amount of $1,397.68 in settlement of all claims for the 2015-2016 school year in accordance with the terms and conditions of the stipulation to be entered into between the board and the parents in a form satisfactory to the district's attorney. Be it further resolved that the board authorizes the superintendent of schools to execute the aforementioned stipulation.
Do I have a second? Mr. Sommer. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Mr. Lumia, Mrs. Karat, Mr. Rubin, Mrs. Laval, Mr. Sommer, Dr. Rizvi, and Mrs. Gallant. Okay. It's now time for comments from the public. If anyone would like to speak, the same rules as before apply, except now you can speak on anything that relates to district business, whether or not it was on tonight's agenda.
Good evening. The issue of excessive absenteeism is being taken far too lightly by this board. Responding to inquiries with excerpts from written policy does not provide valid reason for allowing 55% absenteeism by one who holds an administrative seat. Additionally, 45 and 35% absenteeism by two other trustees is a profound dereliction of duties. Statements that these are volunteer positions does not justify ignoring the oath to serve and commit. It is evasive, exhibits weakness in leadership, and ability to enforce the bylaws efficiently and equitably. The reticence to address these actions is negligent. If one is no longer committed to fulfill their sworn obligation or has become disenchanted, they should honorably, in good conscience, remove themselves. The seats were fervently campaigned for and swore to, undertaking the obligation to serve this district, keeping at the forefront that your actions impact every school, resident, and more importantly, child in the district. Wappingers has the distinction of having its own gang of 8. Decisions are made and resolutions are hastily passed. Misleading and error-laden communications are sent out, creating a false environment that the community is in agreement with your decisions. A few years ago, there was strenuous disagreement amongst board members regarding a proposed letter to the governor about the adverse impact of Common Core. The board as a whole refused to support or sign such letter, using argument about language. Yet a recent letter went out, hastily written and submitted, and obviously without being proofread. Need I point out the governor's name that appeared in this letter? Your actions reek of collusion and incestuousness, carrying on as if this is an exclusive club with no accountability. This is not the Yaya Sisterhood. Board members are rude and disrespectful during public commentary, exhibiting eye-rolling, whispering, covering mouths, bowing heads to feign hiding derisive remarks, and laughing between each other while one is speaking. Some are more engaged with their phones than their speakers. It would serve well to keep in mind the biggest fool is the one who tries to make others look foolish. This board has not been forced to stand for the children. You continually support subjecting the children to the deprivation of the best education, nurturing, and learning environment that a board should be striving for. The residents have the right to demand a full, transparent, honest school board that stands forth and fulfills their obligation above and beyond dictates. We suffer daily with the children's tears, increased anxiety, destruction of confidence and self-worth imposed on them since Common Core overtook education. Children whom you consistently and unreservedly ignore as our words are ignored. Again, I emphasize, if one can no longer commit to the values of the district's mission and the obligations of the oath of office you swore to uphold, then get off this board.
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't applaud nor do we boo when people are up here. If you would like to say something in support of this lady, you too can come up and have 3 minutes. Thank you. Yes.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Cardinelli. I am the father of a preschooler who will enter this district in the near future, and I have been an elementary teacher for the past 14 years. I felt compelled to come before you tonight after reading about a recent resolution that this board passed. A resolution that states that every administrator and teacher in this district supports the Common Core standards, and by way of your unwavering support for the State Education Department, the resolution implies that our educators agree with the Common Core exams as well. I promise you, this cannot be further from the truth. We could easily spend all night long debating the Common Core standards themselves. However, the tests that are put in front of our children are developmentally inappropriate. This is not an opinion, this is a fact. Since the state exams came to 3rd grade in 2006, I have personally administered every single test put in front of my students. This gives me a unique insight as to the current problems with the Common Core exams. Each of you on this board may excel in your individual fields, but since you are not allowed to view the exams, you are put at a disadvantage when it comes to making decisions and sharing your opinions about them. Common Core Standard RL 310 states that third grade students should be reading at a third grade level by the end of the year. Yet on the Engage New York website, The Gray Hair by Leo Tolstoy is listed as an appropriate passage for third graders. According to the Fry Readability Formula, a trusted and reliable method for determining text complexity, this piece of literature is written on a 7th grade level. The inclusion of such passages violates the very standards that the State Education Department has adopted. Not only that, but they also violate the philosophy of this district's reading workshop model. To help put this into perspective, I'd like you to think about placing a third grade football player on a 7th grade team. Would assessing a third grader using 7th grade expectations be an accurate reflection of their skills or the coach's effectiveness? Of course not. But this is what's going on right now across our state. I'm not asking that you directly tell parents to refuse the test. I understand that in your role as a board, you have to follow policies set by the Department of Education. But what I don't understand is what appears to be this enthusiasm for the Common Core testing and the need for this recent resolution. So are you suggesting that every educator in the district supports the Common Core, which would be untrue? Or are you resolving that every educator must approve of the standards, even if they can prove the state testing and certain standards are developmentally inappropriate?
Let's cut it. Resolution to cut the session. That's it. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you insist upon applauding and it becomes a rally rather than a public comment session, we'll have to end it early. That's just part of the bylaws. So please restrain yourselves, and you may come up and speak. No.
Mr. Lumia has a point of order.
Mr. Lumia has a point of order. I'm sorry, you'll have to wait a second. Thank you. Mr. Lumia. Okay, let's, point of order takes precedence. Mr. Lumia made a motion to terminate the meeting. Do we have a second?
I will second it.
Excuse me, Mr. Rubin seconded. Is there any discussion?
Wait a minute, I'm going to ask you something. This is a board. You think it's right to speak, to have any input? Do you think this is fair?
All right, could we have a vote, please, on terminating the meeting? All those in favor of terminating the meeting, please raise your hand. All right, we have, excuse me, Mrs. LaValle, yes?
You asked for discussion.
Well, we can't seem to have any discussion because these ladies are interrupting.
Excuse me, a point of order takes preference and it goes for a vote.
Yes, a point of order, we're taking a vote on it, and then we can see what happens next. All those in favor of terminating the meeting? Mr. Lumia, Mr. Rubin, and Mr. Soma. All those opposed? Mrs. Karath, Mrs. Laval, Dr. Risby, and Mrs. Keller. All right, we will continue the meeting. Would you, yes, you please state your name and go ahead.
I'm Allison Conti, and I just want to thank the four of you that raised your hands first. A couple of things. I'm a gay ed parent that had my kid playing in a parking lot, and I cherish these young ladies for having the bravery up to get up here and beg, and I know it's not the second playground since I started regulating meetings. I know it's a new superintendent, but I think if we could be consistent across the board, because I think it leaves bad taste in everyone's mouth. I certainly couldn't afford the $500 check that I wrote for my kid not to play on blacktop, nor do I think anybody else should have to do that, but if we can, moving forward, try to keep that on an even keel. As to a board member's comment, two of them actually were made today that I was already going to address, over people's finances. I don't get up here to share my personal business. I struggle to stay in my home, and I voted down that property last year, and I plan to do it this year. Because what is missing from those history facts, although that's great for the starving senior that is eating pasta every night, is that before and after, and probably again after, we will close the school. We can put our district's offices in there. Yes, someone made a comment that we could sell the property, but then we would need the money to refit the school after we sold the property and made really not that much money because we have to pay the bond back and then outfit the school. It just seems like we're playing let's go around the mulberry bush. I think that on the southern end, that parents aren't very comfortable. It doesn't affect me. I'm ICT. That once we do, there is the office, we can just keep bumping because the district's so big. And by the time it's all said and done, and my kid gets to high school, you know, she'll have a 45-minute trip to, even though she lives next door to the building. So I think the transparency and all those changes is quite hard for anyone. The last couple of things, the website is not as user-friendly as I would like to think. It actually, although I've addressed some of you with it, has a bunch, and I love Darren, and his staff is awesome, but it's a bunch of inaccuracies. It may be building specific, not actually their fault. We talk about saving money. I did meet with a board member and I talked to another. I have papers this high, whether they be district, classroom, most of them, as I spoke to this board member, are calendars. But I realized that the building has a Google Calendar. Why can't the district have one where a parent could click GAYHEAD, K, 4, and their teachers, and I not get 12 calendars? I could even click lunch. I have 8 calendars per month from all different departments, all different, in the same building, from the same district. I can imagine how much money we could save doing that without disrupting children's lives. Because you see it as saving $1, but there's a bigger picture here that we all are aware of, and we are just living in and reliving. And my last comment for the day, I'm so sorry, is I lost it, so I have to apologize. Oh, maintenance. I'm really glad that we're working on that, but I know I've sent a board member, if not 2, and 2 administrations, tiles that are coming up that are safety issues. I know the pavement at Fishkill Plains is over a year I've distressed it, so if we could get to that before someone falls and I owe more tax dollars, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
My name is Laura Labasi. We're looking at taking on all these new programs, and yet we're doing away with language-based programs for the children that need them most within this district. How can you justify this when at least 1 in 5 children are dyslexic? And how are you going to handle this? Not to mention all the other language-based disabilities there are. So you're taking things away and adding others that English is a new language. How about teaching the children that have a deficiency with the present language we're trying to teach them first? That's the first question. The other thing is that I'd like to know, with regard to the state tests that are coming up, what's your plan for the children who are opting out of these tests? Now that there's no time limit to them, what provisions have you made for the children that are not taking the tests? Where are you putting them? Because the teachers have to go about their normal curriculum for the day. And then what are you doing with the children that are still taking these tests hours later? What kind of instruction have you given to the teachers not to disrupt these test-taking children going forward? Like, where are they going to go? Last year it was the lunch, the cafeteria, all the children that were refusing these tests or opting out. Now I think everybody was done at a certain time and they were going back to the classroom and continuing their day with their normal assignments. What happens when you have children that are taking these tests for countless hours? How is the teacher going to go ahead and continue her lesson? I'm just curious. Has anybody thought about that? I mean, what are we going to do with these children? And is there a way that I can expect some kind of an answer?
The
The way we handle questions is please tell the district clerk, Mrs. Pedro, who's right next to you, and write it down for her, and it'll be put on the website, and the administration will answer it on the website so that everybody has the accurate answer. Okay, thank you very much.
I believe the administration already answered that question.
My name's Patricia Barringer. I'd like to know how we could implement the program or put on the agenda a grave issue that's going on within the community of bullying. That's something I would have to talk to her about, because my daughter goes to Myers Corners Elementary School, and there's some major issues going on right now, and I'd like to get a program to go on how we could, it needs to start in elementary school, because it's only going on in middle school and high school where they're really telling the children about that, but unfortunately it's happening earlier.
I'm on the Wappingers website. I'm looking through board docs. I'm looking at your policies. I'm looking at your policy regarding public participation at board meetings. This is nothing about applause, so you better get on that and fix that. This doesn't say it in here. I want to reiterate what Diane said about the absenteeism. You know, once again, we had a trustee leave early. She's one of the ones who is a little bit excessive in her absenteeism. Again, we don't see the vice president here, and she is well over 55% absenteeism. What are we doing here? You're making policies, or you're even saying that policies exist that don't. We can't applaud. We can't say names. But then you don't even adhere to your own policies about absenteeism. What are you doing? You're just making it up as you go along? And picking the ones you like and picking, throwing away the ones you don't? It's ridiculous. Let's go back to the comment about community feedback, about what the community wants you to do as a board. You know what really says feedback? 40% refusal rate in the district. That's feedback. Where's the proof of this community that told you they want that resolution? Show me the proof. Because you know what I got? I got test refusals to show you. That's proof. That's community voice. Show me your proof. Because you have none. Just because you say it's true doesn't make it true. You need to show us the numbers. Prove it to us that this was a resounding community issue. We're sick of the lies. We're sick of the made-up policies. We're sick of you doing whatever you want. We're sick of the hoofs and the shaking the heads. Enough.
My name is Ted Izzo. I have a son that attends Myers Corners School. I have a very big problem with that school. I have a very big problem when my wife sends a note in when he's going to be absent and asks for his homework for 3 days in a row. Doesn't get it to the 4th day. To me, that's somebody not really doing their job. And if we care about the child's education, why don't we send the homework home with the student? My wife asked the school to send the homework home with a certain student. So it's not as if the school didn't know who to send it home with. But for 4 days, and with the type of classwork that these kids are getting nowadays with their homework, they do fall behind. So for about 4 days, on the fourth day, we're going to finally send our homework back with a certain student. That's not acceptable. And what also isn't acceptable, and I would like to reiterate what a certain community member had said, was with attendance. All right? We all have jobs that we need to do. If I don't show up for my job, I get fired. No ifs, ands, or buts. No excuses. So I think that's something that the board really needs to look at itself and say, what are we doing here? Because if you don't want to show up for your job, why would you apply for it? Why even do anything if you're not going to show up for it? The board has a commitment to the community. We elected you. We're supposed to put our faith and trust in you to do the right thing. But if you don't want to show up for the job that we elected you to do, well, then why are you there? Why do you even bother? Because to me, it sends a strong, clear message that obviously you don't care enough if you're not going to show up. I am seriously considering, from what I have heard for the past year and a half with the school district, I know I'm going to have to work a lot harder, but I'm thinking about pulling my son out of the school, because if you're not going to care about the children, then why would you bother sending your child to that school that doesn't seem that it even cares? Even to send the homework home? That's a simple thing. And what I see with the way that the community members are being treated by the board, I'm sorry. You don't talk down to people. That's just lesson number one in a business environment, that you don't talk down to people. And I would just ask the board, please reconsider that when you do, say something to someone, whether it be a community member, please have a little bit more decency and respect. You hold office. When you hold office, I would like to think that you're supposed to hold a little bit of a higher standard. And that's all that I ask for. Thank you.
This is a board meeting held in public, and board meetings, that's the usual parliamentary procedure, that we do not have applause or people calling out. Thank you.
I spoke earlier on freshman sports. Again, I said that I'm new to this process. I've been to a few of these board meetings. I actually missed last week's, the last one that you guys had, because I expected it to run late, and I expected to talk at the end, and then you guys wrote like under an hour. But I wanted to thank Kristen Crandall and her team for creating the budget that's been presented forth today. Coming from 20 years in accounting and finance in the city, I know how hard it is to put together a budget and how much hard work goes into it. I also, even though I don't condone everyone's opinions on how they approach certain issues, I think how the board has acted tonight has been fair. When it comes to, and I digress, and I don't know if I get 6 minutes for talking on 2 points, but when it comes to the Agenda 5.01, I think that even when you look at the poll that was done with the coaches, that freshman sports is an integral part to the development, not only to the students, but it's also an integral part to the actual students who aren't participating. One of the last games that were held at Van Wyck was against Van Wyck and Waukesha Junior High School. There was a pep rally held at the school. All the students had congregated to enjoy the game. The amount of social interaction and feel of the community couldn't have been higher for those students. I think when those students move on to a freshman level, and the amount of difference that is between a freshman and a senior, they can get lost. So I think that a lot can be done by having a freshman program. When it comes to, and I listen to how everyone gets focused on certain votes as far as this buying a building and the amount of cost savings. Again, I come from the business side of it. I look at what's going on in Washington. if people are against Common Core, then I'm sure there's ways to address it in the board, bring it up, have it put on the agenda. I don't know exactly how that works. I don't want to probably be more active, follow up as far as, I've written a ton of notes as far as where schools, the freshman sports fits in with the budget, just so I can interact, and especially with that March, what is it? The March 28th budget worksheets. I don't know if that's for parents included, if they can get involved in the process, or if everything's done through email. But when you start looking at an issue, and if you're against Common Core, it should be focused against Common Core. If they were trying to get you to put a referendum to Albany, or they're supposed to talk to their congressman or whatever, then that's where they should be focused. When it comes to a building, and if it's going to save X amount of dollars, I don't think that you would intertwine being against Common Core. Then we're going to say, no, you can't save $300,000 or $235,000 because we're against Common Core. We can save, I don't know how much money you can save by going against Common Core, but you don't say no to one thing because you're against something in its entirety. Maybe I'm getting the wrong impression, but as a first-time person here, that's what I saw. And so you end up having deadline. You end up getting nothing done. The money that you can save by doing the building, you can put forward. Everyone wants more, I would think, wants more programs for their kids so they get more advanced, to feel better in society. By saying no to something that is, I know that I'm not, and I like that you're looking at me, but I guess I should feel respect that you're with them, and how everyone gets no respect. Where if it ends up being a simple math problem on one issue, then it should be a simple math problem. If it's a Common Core issue, then it should be addressed in a separate event. Maybe that's a hard way to do it. I don't know. Like I said, I'm new to this, but one, I just want to thank everyone for participating. I want to thank everyone in the ground for posting their opinions as well. So.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, could we have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Lumia, second. Mr. Soma, all in favor?